Thank you. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm an alcoholic. Um, First of all, thank you, Alice, for being a teacher, mentor, friend, and walking this journey with me. Thank you, Karen, for sharing, and thank you, David, for asking me to speak, and for the group for allowing me to be a part of this tonight. You know, I get really emotional when I I talk about this program, this fellowship, and what it's done for my life, especially when as Alice talked about this, walking through some of these trials and low spots. And the truth is, it's not always easy to show up. I have been having this really difficult time at work, and every single day is a trial going in. I have this beloved boss who means the world to me, who is slowly dying, and I get this honor and privilege of being able to show up and be of maximum service to God and the people around me today, but it's not always easy, and some days are really heavy. And the beautiful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is I never have to carry that weight by myself. I never have to guess about what I'm going to do because I have directions and guidance from a loving creator, and I have direction and guidance from the loving members of Alcoholics Anonymous in this fellowship. So for that, I am eternally grateful that I get to experience this. I'm never alone in any of this. And so I get to talk tonight about what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for my life and the lives of every single person around me. And, 45 minutes doesn't seem long enough, but that's what I've got because my love for this program and for this fellowship is infinite. And I could talk about it for hours and days upon days. And that's frankly not how I showed up here. I didn't have that love for this program. In fact, I didn't know what was going on in these rooms. I would hear someone talk like me, and I would think that they were in a cult or they were insane, or that the power that they spoke with, or that the love that they spoke with was fake or fraudulent, or that it was something that I, as a low bottom alcoholic, would never be able to have access to. You open this meeting reading these extravagant promises, and to me, in my heart, I believe they are extravagant because I sat for years and years and years in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, believing with every fiber of my being that these promises would forever elude me, that there is no way that I would be able to experience the happy, joyous, and free thing that you had going on here, the forgiveness, the redemption, the freedom. That was never going to happen for me. I come in here covered in shame because of the violent, disgusting things that I've done to every single person that I love. And I believe that my alcoholism is a problem of morality, that I'm suffering from a lack of morality. And the truth is, I am morally bankrupt when I get here. But I believe prior to coming in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, in fact, I believe prior to even picking up a drink, that there's just something inherently wrong with me. And you're talking about a solution that's spiritual in nature, so I want no parts of that because I want my solution to be something I can see, feel, hear, touch. I want it to be a man or a money or a job. I certainly do not want it to be the big G word. I don't want it to be God. I had thrown the baby out with the bathwater when it came to the God idea coming in here, and because I had a conception of God that I had carried with me my entire life that had been handed down from another human being, it had never worked for me. And the idea was transactional in nature, that if I'm a good little girl, God will love me, and if I'm a bad little girl, God will reject me and toss me to the side or punish me. And and I can't, when I come in here, after all the things I've done, I believe that this power has turned its face away from me and that I will never have access to this power and this love. So I continue to separate myself from you and block myself off, obscure myself off from a power I don't know is already existing within me. I don't know that. And, I do know that there was always something within me that just felt off. The distance between me and you always felt so great. The chasm between me and God felt infinite, right? I could never connect with that power. I would look around as a child and see people in church. I grew up in the church, see people connecting with this power, and I'd be envious of that love and that faith that they were able to have because I didn't feel it. What I did feel was uncomfortable. What I did feel was fear all the time. I was driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity long before I picked up a drink. And then I picked up alcohol somewhere in my teens, and that's my first spiritual experience, if I'm being honest. In that moment when I put that drink to my lips and it went down my throat, For the first time in my entire life, I can breathe and my skin fits and everything feels okay. And all that fear and discomfort disappears. And I feel a huge connection with you and the world around me. And so alcohol in that moment becomes my master and my God. And I make this decision I don't even realize I'm making, and that's to turn my will and my life over to the care of alcohol for the next 20 plus years. I don't realize I'm doing this at the time. All I know, it's the first relief I've had. It's the first time I've been comfortable in my skin. It's the first time I have felt okay. And that's all I've ever wanted in my life, is to feel okay. That's it. And so, in the beginning, I can't say that I'm a daily drinker. I do know what our book says is this, and that was also my experience, that this is a progressive illness, that it's getting worse over time, and that in the beginning it can start off, we can start out as moderate to hard drinkers. And I mean, I don't believe that I was ever truly moderate. I think I might have gone right to hard drinker. And I only say that because of the way our book defines our, the classes of drinkers, which, a moderate drinker, can stop with little trouble if they need to. And that's never been my story. The first time I ever needed to stop or moderate was when I got pregnant with my daughter at the age of 19. And this is what separates me from normal people like my sisters. Like, when my sisters were pregnant, they were picking out baby names and decorating nurseries. And when I was pregnant, I felt like I was in prison. I was in the prison of my sober skin. It did not fit. I could not breathe. And I'm counting every day, waiting till I can get out of this hell that I'm in, so I can at last experience that effect produced by alcohol. And that's exactly what I do. And what I don't know is that over any period of time, I'm getting worse, not better, that this disease is just growing inside of me. And over periods of time, I'm crossing over these invisible lines that I can't see. I cross over the line where it becomes, goes from being the party and a good time to being this full-time job that I need it. I need alcohol to function. I need it to wake up in the morning, to go to bed, to go to work, to have a conversation, to do anything. And as more time passes, I cross over that line where it goes from being that job, where it goes to be this, into being this nightmare. And here's the insane part of it, is like, for so many years, like, I can dress up the outside just enough to convince myself that I have some semblance of control, that I actually have power over this, and that my life is not unmanageable, right? I can keep the outside together just enough. I can maintain employment, but the employment is always changing. I can maintain a roof over my head, but the roof is always changing. I can maintain relationships, but they're always changing. I can't keep any of this stuff. And what I don't know at that time is the true unmanageability of my condition has to do with everything that's going on inside of me. That the moment I'm separated from alcohol, that discomfort returns. I don't know that I'm suffering from an issue like that. Sobriety is the bigger problem. Like, I understood pretty early on that, one was not going to be enough. I've never had one of anything in my life, and I've never understood people that could. So when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and you talked to me about a physical allergy, I resonated with that very quickly. But the biggest problem I had was understanding why, no matter how many times I tried, no matter how many good intentions I have, the intent I have to just get to my daughter's basketball game, get to my, I, I have every intention of making it there, and I pick up a drink on the way from a sober state and I can't make it. I end up in prison. I end up disappearing for weeks on end. That's the condition I suffer from, and it's getting worse over time. And I don't know this is happening. And I also don't know that over time I'm losing the power to choose. And things continue to get darker and darker. And, this started to happen for me when my daughter was about 7 years old. And I had found the next solution that was going to save my life, which was my second husband. He was going to fix it for me, because one of the greatest delusions I have always held, and can still hold to this day, is that if the outside of my life looks a certain way, I can be okay inside. Like, if I just have the right marriage, the right number of children, the right car, the dollar amount in my bank account, all that stuff, then I'll be like normal people. And I can get all this stuff. I just can't keep all this stuff. And I think this man is going to fix me. And I think getting pregnant in this marriage is going to fix me. And I realized very quickly that's not going to work. because I can't stop during this pregnancy, and frankly, I don't even want to, and all that love and connection that a mother is supposed to feel for her baby when she's pregnant, I cannot experience. All I know is that this baby is in the way of me being able to seek the relief that I so desperately need from alcohol. So I drink the entire pregnancy, and I'm covered in shame, and I'm covered in fear that you are going to find out what a piece of garbage I truly am, because normal women, normal mothers do not do this stuff. I know there's something wrong with me, but I continue to do it anyway. And as a direct result, I give birth to a baby who's 3 months premature, and he's 2 pounds. And I remember the first time I laid eyes on my son, he's in the NICU and he's on life support. And I look at him and I see him in that incubator. And in that moment, I feel all that love pour into me, the love that I could not experience when I was pregnant. I felt when I looked at him. I loved him as much as I was capable of loving any human being at that point in my life. But what comes along with that love is this overwhelming sense of shame, because I know that I'm responsible for his condition. I know it's my fault that he can't be held, that he can't breathe. This is my fault. I did this to him. The only thing that I have that I know for a fact that will remove those feelings of shame and disgust towards myself, that horrible self-loathing, that self-hatred, that desire to just kill myself, the only thing I have, the only solution I know at that point is more alcohol. But the problem is alcohol is not producing the same effect anymore. See, I get these windows of quiet when I put alcohol in my body, and that's all I ever want is this noise to shut down in my head, and alcohol will do that for me temporarily. The problem is the longer I'm at this and the more my disease progresses, those periods of quiet get shorter and get shorter and get shorter, and I need more and I need more and I need more. And the longer I'm at this, I start to realize what our book is talking about. I'm so grateful for our literature and how specific it is. And I love how many times our book tells us that this has nothing to do with morality, that we could wish to be moral, wish to be philosophically comforted. We could will these things with all our might. The needed power is not there. Or I can have all of these moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I can't live up to them even when I want to. And the things I know today to be the truth are I am not a sociopath. I know it may have appeared that way to every outside observer who knew me for several decades, but I know that I am not a sociopath because of the amount of shame and regret and remorse I felt after every vile thing I did in my drinking. I felt every bit of it. So I know I'm not a sociopath. And I know I want to be a good person. I so desperately want to be a good sister, a good daughter, a good friend, a good employee, a good wife, a good mother. And I can't. I can't do it. Kind of mother I am. I nod out and I drop my child on the floor, or I drive into the worst neighborhoods of Philadelphia with my baby in the car and I throw a blanket over his head in 80-degree, 90-degree weather to run out of my car and go get a drink. And I get arrested with my 8-month-old baby in the car and I go to jail. And my husband at the time had to come pick up our baby. And this moment in time sticks with me because this was a period that got extremely dark for me. I remember coming home after getting bailed out the next day, and my husband is sitting in the living room and he has everything packed up, his clothes, our baby's clothes, and he's going to leave me. And at this point, I've already lost so much. I've already lost custody of my daughter. I've already lost jobs, relationships, homes, and I'm looking at the only family I believe I have left, the only security I believe I have left, the only home I believe I have left. And I know I'm going to lose them, and I'm terrified. So I do the thing that we do when we're scared and we're remorseful is I beg and I plead and I promise. I promise I'll do anything you tell me to do. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me. Please don't take my baby from me. Don't do this to me. I'm begging, I'm pleading, please. I will do anything. And I mean it. I mean it. It's like coming from this deep part of me. I, I believe everything I'm saying to be the truth up until the point where he asked me to do one simple thing. He asked me to go to treatment on that day and get sober on that day. And in that moment, after making all those promises and believing I'm telling the truth, I look at that man and I look at my baby, and there's some part of me that knows what's going to happen next. And I still say no. I still say no. Because in that moment, my head tells me this: you can get them back tomorrow. You could figure this one out tomorrow, but right now, I need that relief. You need that drink. You need that quiet to come back, right? In that moment, I need alcohol more than I need that roof over my head, more than I need my husband, more than I need my baby, more than I need oxygen. I need that alcohol. And I watch them walk out that door and they never come back. And the amount of suffering I endure after that, self-induced suffering I endure after that is so overwhelming. See, for years and years, I suffer under, under this belief, and I suffer horrifically because I want to die, but I'm too much of a coward to kill myself. So I just try to drink myself to death. I suffer under this lie that I'm choosing to be this way, that I'm too vile of a human being to get this right, to be a good enough mother, to love my children enough. And it wasn't until many years later when a woman in Alcoholics Anonymous opened up the big book with me and explained to me what it says. And there is a solution that, for reasons yet obscure, most alcoholics have lost the power of choice when it comes to a drink. And in that moment, I know that I'm not scum. I know that I'm not garbage. I know I'm not beyond repair, not beyond forgiveness, not beyond redemption. I know that I'm an alcoholic and what that actually means, that I do not have the power to choose my children. Right? That alcohol has become the greatest power and that I need a power that much bigger than alcohol if I'm going to beat this thing. That I have lost all power to choose. And it would be really easy tonight to tell you the story of like losing custody of my kids, bringing me into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, but that wasn't even enough. The 11 felonies that I racked up in my drinking career was not enough to get me here either. Ending up on life support and detoxes, rehabs, losing every job, you know, every relationship, everything that ever mattered to me. That's not enough to get me in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And listen, if none of those things have happened to you, it really doesn't matter because none of that makes me an alcoholic. What makes me an alcoholic is that I have a physical allergy to alcohol. I experienced this phenomenon of craving once I put alcohol in my body. My body reacts differently from my fellows. I cannot stop. But more importantly, I have a disease that centers in my mind. I have a mind that will always bring me back to a drink, regardless of the consequences. I can either it'll tuck the consequences away somewhere and tell me they won't happen, or as time passes, I won't even care about the consequences. I won't even care how bad they are. Because for me, that spiritual malady, that disconnect, that chasm between me, you, and God is so great and so uncomfortable and so painful. If I don't find something to fill it, I'll use alcohol or I'll kill myself. Like that's it. That's what I'm suffering from. And the only reason I even bring up those consequences is to illustrate just how powerful this disease became and how no human power could have relieved my alcoholism. No threat, no consequence was ever going to be great enough. If you told me you were going to lock me up, I don't care. Catch me when you can. If you told me you're going to take my children from me, they're better off without me. And the deeper, deeper truth that I don't like telling, they're in the way anyway. I don't want that responsibility. That's the truth, right? Let somebody else handle that. Or you're going to die. That sounds like a gift, not a threat, right? And it's what it looks like for years in and out of the rooms, in and out of treatment centers, in and out of all these places, being loved and welcomed and being told what the problem is, being told what the solution is. I had messengers, I had teachers. This message was not hidden from me. The problem was this: I never had the honest desire to stop drinking. Our book talks about this desire to have this relationship with God has to come from within me. It can't come from anywhere else. And I don't have this honest desire to stop drinking for many, many years. All I have is an honest desire for consequences to stop happening. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to suffer under these consequences anymore. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my kids. I want to be able to drink successfully. But I don't know how to live life sober. And then something happened to me on May 2nd of 2012. This is not something I was seeking or expecting. I know that I had been on the shortest run of my life and the most painful run of my life. And this run was somehow different just because the outside just didn't look that bad. I'd hit a million other, external bottoms where people were looking at me like, "Oh my God, aren't you done yet? Like you have sores all over your body, like you're dying, you're 75 pounds, all this crazy stuff." And I'm like, "No, I'm not done yet." But this one, I had it together kind of. Roof over my head, car, job, money. but inside, I was dying. I was so broken. And I remember getting on the highway in the middle of the night, driving to go get a drink. And for the first time, I experienced this desire, this overwhelming desire to just stop. Like I just don't even want to anymore. I don't want to drive to where I'm going. I don't want to hurt people anymore. I don't want to lie to people anymore. I don't want to live this way anymore. And the desire was powerful. I mean, I was fighting this. I'm fighting this steering wheel. I just want to turn around. I just want to go home. But no matter how great the desire, I couldn't turn the wheel around. It wouldn't turn. It just wouldn't turn. And in that moment, all the years of being told I was powerless sunk into me in that moment. I knew powerlessness like I had never known before. I was drinking like against my will. And I do something in that moment that I had avoided doing my entire life or been incapable of doing. You know, I've prayed my entire life. And it's always been this sort of transactional relationship with God, sort of, here's my wish list. God is Santa Claus. God is some genie in a bottle where I'm supposed to be granted these wishes. And if this power of this great power of the universe doesn't fulfill my specific wish list, I assume this power does not exist or this power simply doesn't care about me. I'm the forgotten child. But in that moment, instead of asking for anything other than anything specific, I cried out from the depths of my soul, "Dear God, just effing kill me or stop me." Like, I didn't know what power I was crying out to. I was just crying out to a power that I didn't really believe in, and I certainly think didn't care about me, begging this power to kill me or stop me. And 12 hours later, I was in handcuffs. I really don't know how God shows up for you, but I know that in that moment, a power greater than myself in the form of law enforcement showed up and put those handcuffs on and separated me from alcohol for what was would be the last time to this date. And, you know, I would also love to tell you tonight that I have this beautiful gift of desperation where I'm at that jumping off point that the book talks about where I cannot go on like this. I can't live with it and I can't live without it anymore. And I'm willing to do anything. And I would love to tell you that I have that moment and then I experienced this entire psychic change and everything got better. That's absolutely not what happened. What did happen was I experienced the remarkable recuperative power of the alcoholic ego. And what that looks like is, a day or two in a prison cell, I'm starting to get angry at this power for not giving me what I wanted, which was a detox with some good narcotics and a cushy bed. Instead, I got a holding cell and a bunch of cellmates and a lot of consequences and having to appear before a judge who was going to sentence me to a state correctional facility. You know, and what I have for the first 18 months of my sobriety, which I really wouldn't call it that because all I was separated from alcohol, is empirical evidence that what I suffer from doesn't really come in a bottle. And I want to be very clear. I am not saying the bottle is not a big symptom, but that's all it is. It's just a symptom of the problem. It's a big one the second I put it in my body. But once it's removed for me, that's when the greater problem emerges, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity, stepping on the toes of my fellows from inside the walls of a prison cell. The insanity and the delusion of that. Calling home to my mommy and daddy, I'm 39 years old, on a phone account that they are paying for, telling them how they need to help me. Meanwhile, they're hanging up on me, and I can't fathom why. Or writing really long apology and amends letters home about how sorry I am, but if you were better parents or siblings, I wouldn't be here. P.S. Send me money. And this is all I bring to the table. This is all I know. Selfishness and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our problem, right? I think if you take away the alcohol, my problem is removed. Instead, you take away alcohol and my problem becomes big. It becomes large and it becomes way more obvious. And after I get released, I still have these great ideas of how I'm going to manage and run my life. And within a day or so of me being out of prison, all of my ideas get ripped out from underneath me and I'm left with nothing. Nothing. No job, no money, no car, boyfriend, all the stuff that I rely on to keep me okay, to keep me safe, to keep me secure is all ripped out from underneath me, and I'm in pain and I'm sober. I want to die. It's been 18 months. I haven't had a drink. Why am I suffering? So I end up on the floor in the fetal position, crying out again to a power that I don't believe in and I don't think cares about me. Because if this is what sobriety is, I want nothing to do with this. You can have it. And I cry out simple prayers like, help me. What am I supposed to do now? This is too painful. And what happens for me is another power greater than myself in the form of a recovery house manager comes in the room and tells me I need to go to a meeting. And I walk up the steps of my old home group and I'm broken. I'm so broken and I'm so afraid and I can't look at you in the eye because I know you're going to hate me and I know you're going to judge me. And I walk into that room and something shifted, something in that room that I had never seen or felt before because I'd walked in for years and seen happy, joyous, and free people that I disconnected from, that I judged myself away from, that I just separated myself from. But walking in completely broken, my eyes opened in a way they had never been opened before. My ears opened in a way they had never opened before. I saw my people standing in front of me, the people I drank with, got loaded with, people I knew were just like me in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, lit up from within, with a deportment that shouted they had an answer. And I'm still so delusional that I think I'm still not sold on the idea that this is going to work for me. Like I have an ego that loves to separate me from you. I'm either greater than or less than. Coming in, I'm so much worse than you. Maybe it worked for you, but I doubt it'll work for me. But when I've got nothing left, when my scorecards read 0, I will pick up the last thing. And that was that spiritual kit of tools laid at my feet time and time again. And there was no quick journey through this, there was no easy part of going through the steps. It was fast, it was uncomfortable, it was awkward. Um, I didn't have the heavens open up for me. No Bill Wilson experience. I'm the educational variety alcoholic, but through each step that I took with my sponsor, I started to experience an undeniable power working in my life. I get on my knees and I make a decision in my third step. I don't feel this power in that moment, but as I take the actions that follow that third step by writing an inventory and being honest, or at least as honest as I was capable of being at that point in my life, and sharing that with another person and being willing to look at this from a new angle, something starts to happen within me. And as I move through these steps and I have this experience with 6 and 7, like that sixth step where I'm asked, am I still clinging to any of this stuff, these things that I cling to so dearly to give me a sense of safety and security in this world? Listen, coming in here, I'm not clinging to any of this stuff. The bar is so low. My defects of character are so vile and disgusting, and they all cause me consequences. I don't want any of this stuff. Now you fast forward to 13 years sober. Oh, just talk to my sponsor. She's on this call. There's stuff I will cling to for dear life until I'm suffering yet again from a self-imposed crisis I can no longer postpone or evade. And I have to go back to that beautiful 6-step prayer, like, give me the willingness to stop clinging to this. But coming in, I'm on my knees in 7 and going out into that world to clean up that debris that had accumulated out of my efforts to live on self-will and run the show myself. And the book doesn't have to mention alcohol in that part because I don't need alcohol to hurt you or cause damage in my life and yours. But as I do this, as I go out into the world and I sit with the people that I've harmed and I don't say that I'm sorry, I admit my wrongs honestly. I give them the money I owe them. I follow the their requests up with action and changed behavior. I start to experience God within me. That fundamental idea of God that is deep down within every man, woman, and child that I thought was so far away from me that I would never be able to connect with, that I've never experienced before in my life. I'm experiencing that through this removal process, this removal of shame and regret and disgust and resentment and fear and all of this stuff I have piled on top of God, I've obscured God with. And I feel this power working in my life. And by the time I get to the 12th step, when I'm sitting with another woman, I experience this beautiful transformation. I experience these promises that I thought would elude me forever. And I realized that God has done the one thing I thought was impossible. That's taken all those vile, disgusting things that almost killed me with shame and transform them to be my greatest gifts and assets in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because when women come to me, even to this day, and tell me the things that they think they can never tell another living, breathing soul, like I drank in my pregnancy, I abandoned my children, I, they are met with love, the same way I was met with love and understanding, and that vital, those beautiful two words, me too. And that for me was love. That for me was power. That was God. That was connection. That was the thing that I had been seeking my entire life, although I didn't know it. Right? I've been seeking God my whole life, and I filled that God hole with everything but God until I found Alcoholics Anonymous and these 12 steps. And what's amazing is I have this undeniable experience of God, and I start going out into the world and living a life beyond my wildest dreams. And coming in, like, when I heard that phrase, it sounded so hokey, it sounded like a Hallmark card, and I didn't understand what any of that meant. All this stuff about being rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, like, it all sounded so hokey and so corny, but I was existing in a place and time and way that I had never experienced before, and my reactions to life were such that I had never experienced before, right? It was the undeniable presence of a power greater than myself working in my life. And they had nothing to do with the material world, because that's what I thought the gifts were coming in here, right? I still even hear people talk about it in Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh, I got the car, I got the job, I got the money. And listen, here's the cool thing, right? When I stop embezzling from employers and start showing up early and leaving, on time, and like being a worker among workers and living with integrity and honesty, I can make a good living and I can maintain employment. Or when I make financial amends and I open the bills that I owe, and pay the money that I owe, I get good credit and I can have a mortgage on my home and have a car. But none of that is promised. I have all those things today as a result of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I wouldn't have them without Alcoholics Anonymous, but they're not promised to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a distinct difference there because there's a whole world of happening around me that I have no control over. And a lot of the gifts that I've received in my sobriety, these things, to the outside observer, they don't look like gifts, but they truly are the things that I hold most dear to my heart. Like when I got a phone call coming up on 4 years sober that my oldest sister was dead, having this experience of intuitively knowing how to handle a situation that not only would have baffled me, that would have completely crippled me, or would have sent me out, would have sent me to the bar. And in that moment, I intuitively know how to be useful and helpful to my parents who are bearing a child, to her children who are bearing their mother. And I'm presented with this gift, this precious moment in time of being able to be with my parents when they see their child in the casket, and being able to comfort my mother as she's doubled over in pain in the worst moment of her life. Being able to have the courage and the strength and the intuitive knowledge of what to do and how to comfort the woman who was the number one resentment on my list. That's power, that's love, that's God, that's grace. And not only that, I had the last year and a half of my sister's life. I experienced a relationship that had been made completely whole through these 12 steps and through the amends process. A relationship that I had longed for and desired my entire life, a connection that I had always yearned for. I received that gift through Alcoholics Anonymous. And so if I live to be 200 years old, I don't know how I would ever repay that kind of gift. I don't know how. I celebrated my sister's birthday on a Sunday, and I get to celebrate her life by sharing her life with her children and her grandchildren and her legacy and my family. And I don't walk around with shame. And having this experience, another insane thing is, like, I know throughout all of this that God not only exists, but is working within my life, because no matter how painful it got, no matter how deep the grief, I felt loved, safe, and protected by a loving creator. But even having this knowledge and this experience, I'll still go out in the world and I'll forget that. I'll forget that. The noise in my head will get louder than the quiet voice in my heart. And I have a lot of beautiful people in my life who ask me to ask myself an important question. And that question is this: am I really God reliant, or are things just going my way? And for many years in my sobriety, things just really went my way. The career was on a great trajectory, and I was starting to get the things in my life that I had never had before, and I'm just living life. And I started to do this thing called two-stepping, and I don't know if you've ever done this before, but what that looks like for me is I had been powerless over alcohol, and then I come to Alcoholics Anonymous to save all you good people, right? And I'm not actually doing any of the work that lies between 1 and 12. So actually, when I say I'm sponsoring these women, I can't even really say that because I can't transmit something I haven't got. I can't share an experience that I'm not having. So I'm basically just life coaching them, reading the book with them, and over a period of time, that access to God, that connection with his power starts to get obscured, just like it talks about in We Agnostics. We obscure this power with all the worldly clamors, worship of other things. Relationship was definitely a relationship, 6 years in and out of a toxic relationship. And very slowly, I'm obscuring this and I'm blocking myself up. And then something happens in March of 2020, the entire world shuts down. And I'm never going to say that I'm grateful that COVID happened because so many people lost so much, including their lives. But I have this necessary experience where all these external powers, all these human powers that I've built up for myself, that I have made my highest power, yet again, get stripped away from me. And I'm left to face the truth, stripped, without all of these outside sources to keep me safe and secure. I have to face me on me yet again. And again, I'm back to being curled up in the fetal position on the floor of a bathroom, floor of my home, crying out again to this power. And I experience this moment of grace because I know that if I don't do something, I'm about to walk out that door and never come back. And in that moment of grace, I picked up the phone and I called another woman in AA. And that woman took me through the 12 steps as they're laid out in the big book from the very beginning. Like I was a newcomer, like I knew absolutely nothing. Okay, absolutely nothing. And when I tell you, it's very hard for me to describe how powerful this experience is. It's very hard for me to put into words because there's so many pieces of it. There are parts that are so absolutely painful and difficult and humbling and even humiliating. I have to say it was humiliating at times because a couple things, at this point I'm coming up on 8 years sober, and in my head I'm supposed to be this like pillar of AA, and who am I in the community and what does my reputation look like? And my entire step list was a bunch of like AA people, right? It's one thing to come in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous with a list of my grosser handicaps that I've put together in my drinking career. But at 8 years sober, I don't have alcohol to hide behind. I did all this sober. And the kind of stuff I was doing was like I memorized I started studying the traditions so I could argue more effectively in my home group meetings. Like that's how I was operating in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I had this big mess to clean up. So yes, it was painful. Yes, it was uncomfortable. Yes, oftentimes even humiliating. But when I tell you that it was the most beautiful, powerful, an amazing thing that I have ever experienced, I wouldn't be doing it justice because after every amends that I walked away from, I felt freer and closer to God and closer to you than I had ever felt in my entire life. And I am so incredibly grateful I had this experience, no matter how painful or awkward or embarrassing or all of it was, because it taught me some very important things. Number one, I want to remain a forever student of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't ever want to reach a point where I think I'm supposed to know everything, that I do know everything, that I'm supposed to have arrived at a certain point. I want to continue learning and growing in this program and in this fellowship. And it also taught me that steps 10 and 11 have to be a living, breathing, working part of my program one day at a time for the rest of my life, if I not only want to be sober, but if I want to be happy, joyous, and free. And, when I first went through my steps and for several years of my sobriety, these were steps that did not get a lot of attention. If I'm being honest, I had a very rudimentary prayer and meditative life. I would pray in the morning, occasionally do a nightly review. I wasn't doing the 10 step the way it was laid out in the book. I would get a 10-step buddy. I would very quick to spot resentment. And all I really did was vent. There was no bringing God into it. There was no discussion to try to get another angle or try to get to the truth or smash any delusion. It was just turning into sort of a therapy session, and I suffered as a result. and so did other people around me. But when I started actually seeking God on a deeper level in step 11, the way it talks about, the way it's lined, laid out in the book, which is, seek outside of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, go deeper, seek to see where religious people are right, because that's another thing I had to do, is go back and look at a lot of old ideas I was still clinging to, old prejudices, old contempt prior to investigation that I was still holding on to let go of all of that. But was the real game changer for me was step 10, actually doing what it says to do in the book, which is continue to watch selfishness, resentment, dishonesty, and fear. And when these crop up, not if, but when. So what does that mean? I watch the thoughts, I watch them as they come into my life. And instead of allowing these thoughts, these fears, these delusions, these resentments to drag me around by my throat and dictate every word and action and create massive amounts of harm, I can slow down. I can spot it. I can pray, ask God to remove it, discuss it, to get a deeper understanding of it, and then turn my thoughts, or, well, amend what I need to as I go, if need be, and then turn my thoughts outside of myself to relieve me of the bondage of self. Because when I'm focused on you, I can't be obsessed with me. And as I do this, my reactions to life start to change. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but my relationships get better. I start to become a better friend, better daughter, better employee. I start to hear people, connect with people in a deeper way, better sponsor. And I'm so grateful I had this experience, because a few years ago, I was on the phone with my little brother and we were having this conversation that wasn't going well. He was in his active addiction at the time, and it was very difficult to deal with. And at some point in the conversation, he said something to me to the effect of, well, why don't you tell me what you really think of me? And in that moment, my ego just took that bait and ran with it. Like, my ego popped into place. That stage character of Miss Alcoholics Anonymous jumped right up front and center. And what I did was something that I had avoided doing for the last decade, or the previous decade of my sobriety, which is talk down to another alcoholic from a moral and spiritual hilltop. What I did in that moment is I said in the kindest, calmest, and most condescending manner to my little brother, well, why don't you tell me how you really feel? Sorry, why don't you stop blaming mom and dad for your problems? And why don't you take accountability and all this other stuff? And he's just furious with me. He's so angry. He hangs up on me after cursing me out and telling me he'll never speak to me again. And the reason I bring up this 10 step is that the first thought I had after getting off that phone call was, I'm right and he's wrong. And that is the number one thing that will always separate me from you, is I'm right and you're wrong. And I still struggle with that one today. But when I'm practicing this 10 step, I see something underneath that. I feel something underneath that. And I'm not okay with this conversation. And so I pray and I call my sponsor. And we're on the phone for an hour seeking to get to that truth, seeking to see this from another angle. And when we finally get to that truth, it's simply this: I'm absolutely terrified that my baby brother is going to die. And I will say or do anything to keep him here with me. And that's simple. It's that simple. I just want my brother here with me. And so my sponsor tells me, you need to make an amends. That's right there in our 10 step. When we are wrong, we promptly admit it. And even then, my ego wants to fight her a little bit. I'm still trying to find that loophole. Well, he has me blocked. You know, I don't know if he's going to hear this one. And she said, well, I don't really care if he doesn't unblock you in 3 days. You're going to write him a letter and mail it. And so after 3 days, I wrote him a note, because I knew that if I wrote him the whole letter, gave myself that full sheet of paper, a lot of me would get through there. And I didn't want that. I just wanted the truth. And so I wrote 3 sentences on that note. Dear Benjamin, I was wrong to speak to you that way. You didn't deserve it. I love you very much. And 2 months later, my brother died as a direct result of this disease. And on the morning of his death, I was on the phone with his girlfriend for 2 hours. Because this is another thing that we get to do. And I talked about it at the beginning of this talk. Like, we get to be of maximum service to God and the people around us, no matter how deep the grief, no matter how deep the despair. And when I'm on this phone call with her, she shares with me that my brother got that note and what his reaction to that note was. And it was simply, I'm going to make her sweat it out. And so the gift that I received from Alcoholics Anonymous and from these steps and from my sponsor and from you beautiful people is that I know with every fiber of my being that up until he took his last breath, my baby brother knew that I loved him. And I know that he loved me. And I do not walk around with shame and guilt for that last conversation. And I'm able to do the things that I was asked to do by my family, like carry his ashes to his funeral and stand up and give his eulogy and continue to comfort my parents in their never ending grief. See, when I'm talking about a life beyond my wildest dreams, this is the life that I'm talking about, and nothing I'm experiencing that makes me a victim at all. In fact, quite the opposite. And this is just life. Everything that I'm talking about tonight is everything we all are going to experience. We either have experienced it or we're going to experience it. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous does not promise us a life free from loss, from grief, from pain, from tragedy. In fact, it kind of promises us that certain trials and low spots, right? What it promises us is the ability to walk through anything without the thought of her drink with the peace of a loving God. That's the gift of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the life beyond my wildest dreams is that I get to experience all of this life and I don't run from it anymore. I don't have to. I get to be present for all of it, the joy, the sorrow, all of it. And there is so much joy. My daughter's my best friend in the entire world. We have a relationship made completely whole. I get to be the mother I always wanted to be, the sister I always wanted to be, the daughter, the friend, the sponsor. I get to see women come in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous broken and watch their lives be transformed from the inside out. Watch the beginning of this ripple effect that I'll never see the full extent of as they reach their hand out to the next one. I get to be on the front lines and the firing lines of all of that. And the joy that I experience from that alone is more than something I could never fully do justice with words, and something that should be experienced by all. And this beautiful life will always be imperfect. I always talk about my son. I haven't seen him in 18 years. I used to say that I lost custody of him when he was 6 years old. That is a lie. I abandoned my child. And prior to abandoning him, I caused more chaos, damage, confusion, pain, suffering, not only to him, but every single person around him. His mother, his mother, his stepmother, but his father, his family. And when I came in, I was taught to write letters to people who didn't want to take direct phone calls from me. And I wrote a letter to his father and his stepmother, and they never responded. Followed up, they never responded. And after a couple of years of this, I was getting angry. And what happens is I turn into that farmer coming up out of the cellar. That farmer who comes up and sees everything destroyed by the tornado and looks around and says, "What's the problem? The wind stopped blowing." That's me, a couple years sober. I can't fathom why, after 2 letters and 3 or 4 years sober, that why these people wouldn't want to talk to me after all the damage I've caused. And so I do this thing I used to do where I ran around the rooms of AA trying to get everybody's opinion and everybody's suggestion so I can pick the one I like the best and say that AA gave me the suggestion. And this is how I know that there's a power greater than myself working in my life, because at some point in the middle of all this, I have this intuitive thought that I know is not me. And the thought is simply this: maybe you don't get to do what you want to do anymore, because that's not me. Right? And I know exactly what I want to do, even now, today, because I know where my son lives, because I send him a letter, card, money, love, everything I can once a month. I send it with love and hope and no expectation, and hear nothing in response. I know where my son lives, and I want to drive there, and I want to throw my arms around him, and I want to tell him how much I love him and how sorry I am. But see, I don't get to get free at the expense of one of God's kids, especially my own. So instead of doing what I want to do, I ask I ask God for an intuitive thought or decision. And I really suck at that next part. We relax and take it easy. So I begged God and I pleaded, and God, show me, because I don't even know what my boy looks like anymore. Just show me something. And after a couple weeks of praying, I typed my son's name into Instagram, and there was my boy's face, and he was loved and he was happy. And when I tell you, I experienced this peace wash over me, this peace that passes all understanding. It had to be God. And with that peace came this knowing that the restoration of this relationship will happen on God's time and not on mine. And what I know today is that restoration may never look how I want it to, but I know God will use all of this for something so much greater, even if I never get to see it. And that is the promise of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is the gift of Alcoholics Anonymous. My favorite line in the big book, hands down, is that we have to burn the idea into the consciousness of every person that we get well regardless of anyone. All we have to do is trust God and clean house. That gift is available to all of us. I love you all. Thank you so much for having me tonight.